Before we get going with today's podcast, I want to talk about a collaboration we have with Glazier Clinics. To honor the 5th year anniversary of the podcast, we have a special sweepstakes together where you can win flight for two, hotel, and a rental car, as well as a Glazier Pass for your staff. To do that, go to glazierclinics.com/win and enter there. On today's Coaching Coordinator podcast, I'm joined by a former player who is now working in the CFL. He's the Assistant Director of Player Personnel for the Hamilton Tigercats, somebody who I've been excited to watch and follow his career and the things that he's doing, and I'm excited to have him here on the podcast today. So my guest is who is from Buffalo, New York, a former Baldwin Wallace Yellow Jacket. And Richie, it's great to have you here and to be talking football with you, talking about what you do in this profession.
Absolutely, Coach. I appreciate you letting the audience know I was a former player of yours, because they're probably asking why I'm calling you Coach every time I mention you. So I appreciate you having me on the podcast. I've been excited to get on.
So your start into coaching, and that was your start in kind of getting into a football career, began in August of 2013. That was your senior year, and we were 3 days into camp, and it was done for you. So going back to that had to be a difficult time, making that transition. But what was your thought at that point in getting into it? Was there a thought that you were going to get into coaching? Was that something you were looking at? Because I believe you were a pre-law student. I don't think you were looking at coaching at the time.
Yeah, I was political science, legal studies. I was getting all ready. I was studying for the LSAT, getting ready to go to law school. And because you lived it with me, that us at Baldwin Wallace, your senior year in college, especially as a Division III athlete, that's the pinnacle of your athletic career. And I've been playing football since I was 5. I wasn't thrilled with the way I had to go out. It was a career-ending injury, and I said, you know what, I've worked my entire life for this senior year moment at Baldwin Wallace, and I wasn't happy with the way that I had to go out. So I said, you know what, I want to be a part of the team. And, I asked Coach Snell at the time. John Snell was the head coach at Baldwin Wallace at the time, and Tony Niemeyer was the offensive line coach at the time. And obviously, Coach, you were there as the offensive coordinator. I asked to be a part of the coaching staff and just kind of get my feet wet in some way to stay involved with the team. I really didn't at the time. I didn't think of it as a career path, but I thought of it more as like, I want to stay a part of the team. I don't want to just be an injured player. I don't want to be an injured, senior that is just watching from the sidelines. I want to be actively involved. And the one thing about being a student assistant coach that year is that I realized fairly quickly that I did not want to coach. I don't know if that was because it was fresh and I didn't, I was coming literally right off the field and wearing cleats, holding a clipboard and having a whistle around my neck. I don't know if it was fresh or not. I wonder what it would be like if I got back into coaching now in my career. But my personality, I think, always deferred to, personnel and scouting and sitting down and cutting up tape and watching film and roster building and identifying traits and those types of things. And, so to speak, I think scouts do a good job flying under the radar, and their personalities are fairly quiet, cool, and collected. And I think that scouting and personnel kind of fit my personality. So I'm extremely grateful for that student assistant opportunity that I had to coach my senior year, because it kind of not only got me out of a super challenging time in my life, ending my football career as a player, but it also helped me. And I think this is important in identifying what's right for you, so to speak, what's the right seat on the bus for you, is that it showed me something that I didn't want to do in the industry, and was able to cross one of the things off the list of things that I didn't want to do. And I think as I went through the year, though, I said, you know what, I want to be around football in some capacity. And even when I was planning on going to law school, I always wanted to get back into the sport. I wanted to practice law to become an agent. And once my football career got jumped off the page a little quicker than I anticipated, I said, you know what, I'm gonna roll with this. I'm gonna see what comes of it, and I'll put law school on the back burner. If I want, I can always go back and do that. And once I put it on the back burner, I just went off and running for it. And my passion for being in the industry just continued to grow and grow throughout the years. And now it's who I am and what I do.
So after John and Tony and myself chased you away from coaching, you went down the block and you had an opportunity with the Cleveland Browns. What was that first opportunity for you? And, as you look at, I guess, some of those formative lessons for you, whether that was, like I said, John, Tony, and I telling you, this isn't for you, right? We didn't tell you that, but you saw that for some reason. All kidding aside, like what were the things that you carry forward, especially early in your career here, where you feel that it's become a big part of who you are?
Yeah, I think the great thing about the way my career started, Coach, is that I had to handle adversity at the very beginning. And, I truly do believe that if you're going to be in this industry, whether it's coaching or scouting or athletic therapy, equipment, really whatever part of the competitive side of the organization, you're going to be dealing with some sort of adversity. And how are you going to react and respond to it and come out of it? And I think the fact that I dealt with a heavy dose of adversity right in the beginning with my career-ending injury and whatnot, and kind of dealing with those emotions while I was being a student assistant for you guys at BW, I think that helped the concrete foundation needed to really build a career. So when I did, have adversities when I was with Cleveland or Indianapolis or now with Hamilton, or personal adversities while I was working, I was able to always reflect back on one of the tougher moments of my life and see how I got through that. So, I was thankful enough, like you said, to go down the block and have an opportunity to work with the football research department as a charting analyst for the Cleveland Browns. I think one of the cool things about that job is that it was really outside of my wheelhouse at the time, outside of my skill set. And, the Cleveland Browns, they did a great job saying and communicating to us that, it's tough to get a leg into the industry. And they realized that. And they identified various people throughout the country through, communications, sending in your resumes. And God knows I did that enough, whether it was through mail or email or calling people. I even bought a $800 fax machine that I had in my dorm that I was faxing teams my stuff, because I said, hey, everyone's sending stuff in the mail. Someone's probably doing it through email. And I doubt anyone in 2013 is using a fax machine. So I said, maybe my stuff will get to the right desk if I start faxing it. So I guess the Browns saw my information one too many times. They gave me a call, and after a phone interview and a couple of testing rounds of what the job was going to be like, I guess they saw something in me. And like I said, they did a great job of communicating that it's tough to get a first opportunity in this league and in this industry. And they used this as kind of an entry-level opportunity for guys to get experience, but also contribute to the organization in a project in a high-end area in what they were trying to build in Cleveland at the time. So I'm always going to be thankful to the Browns. Now, I tell everyone I'm from Buffalo, New York, but I became a man in Berea, Ohio. And that's not only my time at Baldwin Wallace, but that was my time with the Browns and my first opportunity in the industry.
So thinking back to that time, as you said, not your skill set, you're developing who you are as a coach. Looking at that time, what advice do you have to guys who are getting into this? And it might be as a GA, it might be as an analyst, it might be as, a limited earnings guy or even a volunteer. Yeah. How do you develop yourself without a huge skill set in order that they want to keep you around? What are the things you are doing that really make people start to notice who you are, and then obviously take notice of your work as well?
I think the first thing is to always say yes. When you're asked to do something, even if you don't know how to do it, say yes. And if you don't know how to do it, figure it out. Come through for people. At the end of the day, I think that was, and that still is my calling card, even to this day, is that, obviously I've developed a toolkit and a skill set, broad skill set that covers, football operations, football administration, player development, player personnel, and scouting, and even a little bit of coaching if we go all the way back to Baldwin Wallace's days. But, I think that's still my calling card to this day, because it's who I am, is that I'm always going to say yes. something. Someone's going to ask me to do something. They trusted me that I'm going to come through for them. So you can bet that I'm going to say yes, even if I don't know how to do it. And if I don't know how to do it, I'm either going to reach out and counsel with people that I know have done it in the past, or I'm going to figure it out myself using the skill set and the tools that I have. And, through that methodology, you're going to make mistakes. And I'm happy that I made mistakes, and I'm glad that I've made mistakes because I always am able to reflect on those. So, specifically to your question, Coach, advice to guys that all they really have to hang in their hat on is that they were a college athlete or that they played ball at the collegiate level, because that's all I really had at the time, is that I'd like to think I was a decently smart kid and that I played football at a great Division III program. That's all I had really to hang my hat on at the time. So I said, you know what? How am I going to separate myself? And that's going to be always from being positive. That's going to be always trying to find the answer to things that I don't know. When the metaphorical crap hits the fan, people are going to say, hey, I could reach out to Rich Massaro to get it done and get it done right.
I know as we were talking before we hit record here, one of the words that I highlighted here you mentioned was the word authenticity. That was a big part, as you said, of that beginning for you. You didn't have much in the way of developed skill set, stuff that you could bring to the table, but you did have the authenticity. Explain a little bit more about that and expound upon that idea of authenticity.
Yeah, I think, Coach, being authentic, I think it's just being confident in who you are, to be real, to be genuine to those around you. It's okay to this day. I know what my strengths are, and I know what my weaknesses are. But I continue to work on them, my weaknesses, and I continue to work on my strengths, and I don't shy away from what my weaknesses are. And I think at the end of the day, to members of this industry that have been, in football for, 30, 40, 50 years, the OGs of the industry, I think at the end of the day, people respect people that try and the people that work hard and people that, at the end of the day, they're not going to be perfect, because you're never going to bat 1,000 as a coach. You're never going to bat 1,000 as a scout. I mean, we could go through all the drafts in the history of the world, and you could always see, hey, that guy didn't pan out and the team picked him, and there's various reasons why that happens. But I think rolling into a building, rolling into a personnel room, rolling into a meeting room, and just saying, hey, when someone calls your name, just having the conviction to say what you believe, even at a young age. I think a lot of people take notice from that early on, and that's a skill set and a trait that I believe, like I said earlier, the OGs of the industry, they always like to cultivate and kind of continue to grow that person into the skill sets that they can teach, the teachable skill sets. So whether you got a lot of experience or you don't have none at all, you maybe got a little bit, you're just starting off. I think identifying, your positives, identifying your weaknesses, and not being afraid to shy away from either one of them. Because I do think at times people that know what they're good at, sometimes they don't show it. And it's because they're not comfortable and they're not confident in the authenticity of what they have to offer. So I think that's a great trait to have early on. Sometimes it'll bite you in the butt, but those, like I said, those are the mistakes that you can learn from and reflect on going forward and kind of make yourself into a better professional going forward.
In your role as director of player personnel, as a guy who is going to go out and do all the scouting, talk to a lot of people, you're going to be on the road, you're going to get all the information that you can. In a lot of ways, you were preparing for that, to be a lawyer and understand all these different cases and have all this kind of information in your head, have systems of organization. And systems of organization certainly are important to the job you do now. For you, what's been the best way for you to organize all this info you're bringing in on 700 some players every single year, that you sit in a meeting, you got to be able to boom, spit out that information to them? How do you go about that process?
Yeah, thankfully, here in Hamilton, we got a great database, and we got systems that go in and organize a lot of the information for us. But personally, I'm pretty old school in the way that I do things. I have a notebook that I carry around with me everywhere that I go on the road. My MacBook Air is my best friend. My Toomey backpack. It sounds trivial, some of these things, but it really, truly, when you're on the road, 100 days, 125, 135 days a year, having a backpack that can help you organize all the things that you have to carry into a building, it seems trivial, but it helps. When you're in a room and you're talking with pro liaisons and coaches and you got to grab things quickly, to know where those things are at in an organized manner, those things help. So you're not fumbling for the information or you're not fumbling for your materials and someone's talking. For me, my mind is I'm blessed in the fact that I think my mind was just naturally hardwired to be super organized. And I bet you some people that you talk to me that have worked with me, if you talk to, they'd probably say I'm a little OCD when it comes to my structure and my attention to detail. And I'll take an extra hour or two just to make sure that the messaging on how the information looks and sounds and is displayed is correct, because I do think that not only is the information itself important, but if it's not displayed in a manner that is appealing to people that are reading it and appealing to people that are using it as a part of an evaluation that's going to help your team grow and be better, those are things that are important as well. So for me, it's color coding. It's Microsoft Word, Microsoft Note, OneNote, Microsoft Excel, my Toomey backpack, my even I go as down to the types of pens that I use. I got certain pens in certain colors that mean certain things. My kind of the vernacular that I use while I'm writing notes, my abbreviations for words, it makes sense to me. And I think that's one of the things that scouts and personnel, when you're first getting into the industry, I think it's important to identify what works for you, because what works for you doesn't necessarily work for everyone else, and what works for everyone else doesn't necessarily work for you. So identifying what works for you and the way that your mind is hardwired, and then obviously doing that within the guidelines of the organization that you work for at the time of the program is a great way to start. And for me, that's how I've been able to be successful, as a personnel executive.
When we look at personnel, whether that's someone like you at the professional level or the college coach who's looking at prospective student athletes, or as the high school coach, somebody who's preparing his players to be a part of all these processes, hopefully move on to the highest levels. We can look at all the measurables. We have all that data. To me, that seems like the easy part. For you, how do you go about evaluating the fit in a culture? What are the things that you're looking for outside those measurables that tell you this is going to be the right guy for our program?
Absolutely. And I think the most important thing in that process is not to be looking for anything off the bat. I think you have to sit down and communicate with your coaching staff. And you have to know the scheme inside and out. You have to know what each individual position coach likes in their position room. You have to know what your coordinators like holistically for their side of the ball. You got to sit down with your special teams coordinator and find the traits that they look for your special teams aces on your roster. And you have to sit down and you have to communicate that. And you really have to get to know your counterparts. And I think in football, whether it's professional, collegiate, there's always going to be a natural divide, I think, between coaches and personnel. And I think the way that you become in lockstep with each other and work well to be successful is to communicate, and even to over communicate, giving off too much information at times, because, when you go on the road, if the waters are muddied, you don't know what you're looking for, and you don't know what your organizational pillars are and the type of athletes that you're looking for, not just in terms of the skill set, the physical athletic skill sets, but the type of man, the type of young man that you're looking for to add a part of your organization, it's not going to work. And I tell, guys that we're bringing up to our league, like, that have spent time in the NFL or they're coming to our league right out of college. This is a marriage. And for a marriage to work, you have to communicate. And it's going to have to be the communication sometimes is going to be easy, but it sometimes isn't going to be easy. You got to be passionate enough about what you're trying to obtain, the goals that you're trying to obtain, to have those tough conversations as well as the easy ones. Just sitting down with your coaching staff and making sure, hey, this is the type of skill sets that they're looking for within their scheme, because there's no point of bringing in players that aren't going to be able to fit the scheme. And I think if you build those not only professional relationships with your coaching staff and your counterparts, but your personal relationships, go out, have a beer if you're of age, and get to know them personally. It all helps cultivate a great relationship between your coaching staff and your personnel, to where then your scouts can go on the road and say, whether you're at Indiana or Toledo or, USC, you can then identify those players in the information gathering session with the universities. And then when you evaluate them on film, you could then match their athletic skill set to the other information that you were given from the programs, and, try to continually look for validation in the information that's been given to you to make the best decisions, whether, it's for your draft or later down the road if you don't have the chance to draft those players, free agency. So I think communication with your staff, all the experts that are around you, is definitely the way to start before you hit the road and get out and you're looking for ball players for your team.
I know you've been able to establish those relationships around the different places you've been visiting, and you've gotten to know some staffs pretty well. I know you came through the area here a few months ago, and we're going to make a lot of stops along the way. Outside of the coaching staff, who are the other people you like to be able to ask about, a certain player? Are there, as an example, I know, recruiting at the college level, you walk into a building, a person who can tell you a lot about that kid is the one who sits in that office all the time and know who's in trouble, know who's doing well, right? That receptionist usually, who's kind of manning the gate, is going to be able to tell you a lot about that person, outside of the coaching staff. For you, how do you go about, I guess, learning more, again, than the stuff that you can get from your reports, all the measurables, again, going into more of the person? Where do you learn those things?
So, Coach, I think one of the most important things in developing these relationships is that, you got to have the soft skills to talk with people, whether they're complete strangers or someone that you've known for a decade. Having the soft skills to walk up to a complete stranger, shake their hand, look them in the eye, introduce yourself, and then have the confidence to ask the questions that you have to ask to get the information that you have to get, and asking it in an appropriate way to get the answers that you're looking for. I think going into a building as a visitor, there's always going to be a certain sense of guarding some information. And, that's a lot of the case, no matter where you go, to a certain extent. There's not 100% transparency anywhere that you go. I mean, if you walked in our building, it'd be the same thing. And I think getting to sit down with multiple people in multiple departments, whether it's the pro liaison, who's usually the director of player personnel, the director of football operations for college programs, or it's the coordinator, the head coach, the position coach. I'll even go grab a student assistant, athletic trainer. Sometimes the people that don't think that their opinion is going to matter to a scout. The equipment manager guys always have a pulse on where things are at in the organization. And like the thing, Coach, you might have heard me use this term earlier in one of the previous answers that I gave, but confirmation of validity. And when you hear about information about a player from one person in a program or an organization, you want to get confirmation that information is valid. So you're going to go through position coaches. You're going to go through the experiences that strength and conditioning coaches have had. You're going to go through the experiences that athletic counselors have had. And they're all going to give different perspectives from the player because they work with them in different perspectives, where, a position coach might have an intimate one-on-one relationship with a player on the field. Your academic counselor is probably going to have an intimate relationship with the player one-on-one off the field. And sometimes those are two different people. And it's just like the athletic trainer. That's an area of the building sometimes where, you're dealing with injuries and you're dealing with adversity, and you might get a different flavor of the player in that part of the building than you would when they're between the white lines in the field. So I think just putting the book together on a guy coming out, that's your main objective. Just trying to have as much information as you can. You confirm it through multiple outlets that deal with a player in multiple different exposures, and then you have the opportunity to sit down back at your program or your organization with 15 or 16 experts in the field, and you guys, debate it, and you go back and forth, and sometimes you agree, sometimes you disagree, and that's how you ultimately come to the best decision for draft night, or for, giving a guy a high-end free agency contract, or maybe trying to find the bargain of the free agency period, or the bargain of the draft. So I think just going in there and like I said, I talked about earlier, authenticity, just being confident in who you are, figuring out and knowing a lot about the player rolling into the program so you could speak knowledgeably about the player, and then being organized and obtaining the information, sending it back to the organization, sitting down as a staff and having the fun debates and deliberations to make the right decision. So it's a long process that has multiple tens of 20s of different data points, but all those data points are ultimately going to lead you to the right bell curve, and or a bell curve that's more right than wrong. Because like I said, no one's batting 1,000 in this industry. So that's what we try to do in Hamilton. I think that's what scouts all across the industry, whether it's in the NFL or the CFL, or even, in college programs, because I know that's starting to be a thing now. And in terms of evaluating prospects out of high school and in the transfer portal, I think that's what at the end of the day that you try to do as an evaluator, is just trying to build a book on a guy, not only his on-the-field skill set, but his off-the-field skill set as a young man, and seeing if he's the right fit for your organization or program.
Well, I certainly appreciate that perspective you've given into the personnel side of things, and I certainly see the value for our listeners out there, whether you're a high school coach and thinking of how you're preparing your young men for opportunities that might present themselves, or you're a guy who's out there recruiting at the college level and looking for people. And I love that idea of building the book and just the different ways you can find that information. And appreciate you sharing that with us. And the last question I have for you, Richie, is the one I always ask. I told you I was talking to you about my favorite book the last time we sat down, Bill Walsh's Finding the Winning Edge, and that's the last question. So when you look at, and I know you have a team of people you lead now, and obviously your team and what they do, their success certainly feeds into the success of your program there at Hamilton. But what is the one thing you do as their leader, as their coach of that position, that gives them the winning edge?
Coach, I think it's loyalty, and I think I know. I go on the road, and I know that loyalty is a main core value and pillar of many cultures in America, whether it's the Division I level or Pop Warner football, or the NFL or the CFL, Pro Bowl. Loyalty is always going to be a part of what people want to build. And, I took the time during the year of COVID, where we were working more remotely and had some more time at night to think about, this industry and the things that are important to you. And to me, loyalty is that number one pillar for me. And I had the opportunity to really deep dive into what my beliefs are when it comes to that word loyalty and what that means. And, I kind of redefined it in my own way. I define loyalty as a long-standing, unbreakable bond that's built upon the foundation of love, unwavering dedication, and respect. That's the way that I define loyalty. When you break that down even more, there's really 4 common denominators into every relationship that you have that's loyal. And it's time, it's emotions, it's mutuality and commitment, and it's respect. And, at the end of the day, whether you're a young man or a young woman in this industry, no one likes to open up the gates to their emotions and how they feel about, their current situation or what their job is or what the industry is and how they've navigated the industry. There's always a feeling of, I gotta dip my toes in the water before I jump in. And I think that, when you're able to jump in so to speak, jump into the deep end with your staff, you're able to build those relationships to be loyal ones, to where you could have very, very tough conversations. You could have very easy conversations. You could be 1,500 miles away. I could be on the road, and someone could be back in the building. And having that relationship of unwavering loyalty with another human being in your department is critical. And I understand now, throughout my journey, why when you're building an organization, you're always going to go back to people that you've worked with in the past, that you've had success with, because I think a lot of success in this industry is built on relationships that are loyal, and those are rare. So when you come across them, you got to make sure you always value that relationship and you value that person, because once you got a staff that's really loyal to each other, and that you're going to walk through the metaphorical gates of hell with these guys, and these women, and that's going to be the group you're going to do it with, hell or high water, whether if you're floating or if you're on the Titanic sinking. The fact that everyone's, the people in your building, the people that you work with are always going to have your back, no matter what, is a very powerful place to be working in. And when you can do that, you better bottle that stuff up and put it on the grill and start cooking, because you're going to be cooking with gas and you're going to be going in the right direction. So for me, it's loyalty, and I'm always going to have my group of men that I've worked with and women that I've worked with that I'm loyal to, and I know that they're going to be loyal to me, and that, whether we're apart, when opportunities arise and we grow apart, I know if an opportunity ever arises to where we can get back together, I always know that it's going to be a great opportunity. And that's probably the one thing for me, is just to always remember who the people are that you take care of, and the people that take care of you, not only personally, but professionally, and day in and day out in the organization.
Well, Rich, I appreciate you taking care of me and sending me along some Ticats gear. I was wearing my hat the other day, and I was at the UPS store sending something out, asked me, what was that? What's on your hat? So I explained to him and told him about, former player who's a scout now. So definitely proud of what you're doing, Richie. And coaches, you can follow him on Twitter. It's at Rich_Massaro. That's Massaro. Richie, keep up the good work. Keep growing in this profession. Thank you for taking the time and joining me here and sharing some of your perspective on the things you've learned so far along the way.
Love it, Coach. I appreciate you having me. I'm glad you're repping the Ticats. We got to get some more CFL gear down in the States and educate everyone about our great game.
Please don't forget to register for our sweepstakes, our collaboration with Glacier Clinics. Clinics being back in person this year, they're going to give the winner a Glacier pass for your staff, as well as a flight for two and hotel to any of their locations where they're having their clinics. You get a rental car in the mix as well. It's a package worth $1,500 on the travel, another $400 on that staff pass. So again, go to glacierclinics.com/win to sign up for that.